Hey, what's going on, everybody? This episode, I'm joined by Luke from Tooth of the Arrow Broadheads, and Luke is the owner of Tooth of the Arrow, which is a broadhead company based out of Minnesota, and still fairly new. They've only been around for about 5 years now, and doing a good job, though. I've used their heads on a blacktail hunt here a couple of years ago, killed a really nice blacktail with one, so it was cool to kind of hear the story of where they came from, why they went with the broadhead they did, and talk broadhead design and materials and stuff, and kind of geek out on it a little bit while also having a really good conversation about just broadheads in general. So I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Just one quick warning is that there was some like glitching or scratching on the internet protocol, so I'm not really sure what was going on here with this episode, but there's definitely a little kind of a glitchy sound every once in a while on the podcast, and not happy about it, but it is what it is, and hopefully you guys can bear with it. I know I'm kind of a sound Nazi, and it's not up to my standard, but the content's there. It's good content, and I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance at listening to it that did want the opportunity. So outside of that, I appreciate the opportunity, Luke, to come onto the show, have you on here and talk about broadheads, and be able to learn from you, and I hope you guys enjoy. See you at the end. So let's get a quick introduction for you, Luke, and tell me a little bit about yourself and your product and stuff real quick.
My name's obviously Luke Allison. I'm one of the owners of Tooth of the Arrow Broadheads. We've had our product on the market now. This is the start of our 4th year of really marketing and selling it. We're actually a couple different companies under one umbrella. The manufacturing side, we do everything in-house. 100% American made. The manufacturing side, we've actually been around for about 35 years now this is our 17th year, I believe, maybe 16th. I might be saying that wrong, of actually working in the archery industry. So we had a lot of experience in the archery industry before diving into our own product and our own company with doing manufacturing for other larger companies in the industry. So whether people knew it or not, they've probably been using our products or components for the last 15, 16, 17 years.
Okay.
And so with that, we decided to branch off and start our own product line, and that's when Tooth of the Arrow was born.
Perfect. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Is your connection on your microphones, is it like stationary?
Oh, it should. Yeah, it is. It should be good.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. All right. Let me know. Is this okay now? Let me know.
It's just like for like half a second, it's like a scratch that comes through. It's really weird. But so we'll just keep it going here, man. It's not a big deal. Hopefully the folks will bear with us here. So with the background, so you guys produced, like, manufactured other broadheads and stuff prior to producing your own and stuff, or how'd that work?
Not necessarily broadheads. We never manufactured other broadheads. We did other components. So we do have some non-disclosure agreements in place. So I can't say exactly every one we manufacture for. But for example, some people I can say, we do stuff for Victory Archery. We make a lot of their points. We do other inserts for other people. Basically, a lot of components we've done. So we never actually did a full broadhead, but different components we've done for a long time.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So you guys had a good background in machining and designing and stuff. So, oh, excuse me. So I guess my first question would be, why 4-blade? It's probably one of the least amount of broadhead designs out there. Is probably a good solid 4-blade. You really have a lot of 3 blades. You have a lot of traditional style single bevel, a lot of 2-blade basically with a bleeder. Not a lot of good 4 blades, I'd say, out there.
Yeah, I mean, you know as probably as well as anyone kind of the history and progression of broadheads, and actually probably some of your listeners know better than I do of it, but you start off, back in the day with fixed, and then as bow speeds got faster and shots got a little bit longer, flight wasn't quite there, and so that's when the expandables came into play, and then the expandables made a lot of sense, obviously, because, the whole fly like a field, everything else and all that related.
Yeah.
And then the move back towards fixed came in once you could get the engineering correctly to make a fix make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of going to why we did a 4-blade over a 3-blade, obviously there's the, the elongated 3-blade 1.1/8 cut. There's a lot of popular brands out there that have that style right now.
Mm-hmm.
And actually our original testing, and we played around with a lot of designs before we brought what we have to market. We start off with a 3-blade. We got it to fly great. We then, if you go to a 4-blade, you're getting a 25% more cutting surface just from going to a 3 to a 4,
Mm-hmm.
And we found that basically by making the broadhead stubbier, shortening the ferrule length down,
Mm-hmm.
then a lot of the traditional 3-blades that are out there right now, we could actually get the exact same flight characteristics as a typical 3-blade with getting 25% more cut. So we found there was more advantages to a 4-blade versus a 3-blade
Mm-hmm.
in our findings, in our opinion, and so that's why we rolled with that one.
So I've used your broadhead and I've got some experience with it and killed a blacktail a few years ago with one. It was probably 3 years ago now. No, it was 2 years ago. And it was right when kind of Tooth of the Arrow hit our pro shops over here. And one of my buddies was pushing them, and I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. He's a big fan of them right out of the gate. And I immediately went to the XL 125s. And
Yep.
those, they spun fantastic. I mean, I imagine that another benefit of having the shorter broadhead and the shorter ferrule would be that it would be easier to keep your tolerances of the straightness of the ferrule since you don't have to keep it as long. Did that play a role in your guys' designing at all?
So a little bit. So kind of a 2-part answer. First part of it, so we have the 1-inch cut and the XL, or which is the 1 3/16 cut that you referenced.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference between the two, the 1-inch versus the XL, the 1 3/16 or the XL is literally a 35% or 33.3% scaled up version. So ferrule 33% longer, cut length 33% longer. It's totally scaled up. In terms of flight, because so on our 1-inch, because it is stubbier and shorter, we're keeping 93, 94, depending on what grain you're using, of the weight within the ferrule or within the diameter of the shaft.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get a larger cut, you get a larger cut, you're now moving more of that weight outside the diameter naturally, just to get the bigger cut.
Right.
And the blades are making up more of the weight. And as you get at a farther distance, now wind is playing more of a factor. Any sort of variables, it's catching more. So, I'll be the first to admit, I'm an honest guy. I'm the first person to admit that if you're taking any sort of longer shots, the 1 3/16 probably isn't for you, just because of those reasons. Just because it's pushing more air, and the variables can be, increased at distance. So
right. And when I was shooting, or go ahead. Sorry.
No. So I was just, basically going to say that, with your experience and in terms of tolerances, our tolerances are basically the same in terms of blade thickness, ferrule weight, all that. But just by increasing everything by 33% or basically a third, more of the weight is outside the diameter of the shaft. And that naturally is going to cause any little discrepancy in wind or other outside factors to be, much more pronounced.
Well, I'm glad you went there because I was going to say somewhere in the podcast, but we'll get it out of the way now, is back, and I think I've said this before, I was shooting your guys' broadheads along with 3 or 4 other broadheads when I was just trying to figure out which one I was wanting to shoot. And I was kind of surprised that the 4-blade, the XL, was hanging with the 3 blades, despite obvious design differences. But kind of like what you're saying, when you really dig into it, not so much different as far as cutting and penetration and stuff. But I noticed like around, and granted these were the XLs, but granted around 90 plus yards, I'd start getting that obvious a little bit more drag out of the XL as I would say like a Nap Hellraiser or a Kudu. Yep. Or we're talking 4 to 6 inches at 90 plus yards, which that's actually really good. I tell anyone, if you're going to go over 60, go with the 1 inch. So okay. if you were getting still decent groupings at 75 to 90, that means you're obviously a good shot and well tuned. So, but the normal person, the average person, I tell anything plus 60, drop down to the 1 inch because you will not notice the difference then. If you're above 60, it then just becomes more variables, I guess. I think that's probably a really good point. Is I was shooting my Synergy back then, and that was a really accurate bow, great bow, really held steady. And even though it looked a little weird when it was set up, after it was set up, it was a little outside versus center, or kind of center shot was kind of being funny with it. But anyways, it was shooting. It was just eating any broadhead I want and spitting it out perfectly, pretty much. And there was a couple that flew that didn't really agree with the setup wholeheartedly, but I was really surprised at how well they flew. And it's a good point that my Synergy was super, I was shooting a lot. It was super tuned. I mean, it was really just a great shooting bow when it was shooting. And for guys that maybe want to try the tooth of the arrow, probably the regular version, especially for tuning wise, would probably be a better route than just going balls deep into the XL version and saying, "Oh, here we go," because you might run into a few more snags versus the regular version.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, the worst thing that I want someone to do is say, "Well, let's take I'm trying a brand new setup, and I'm going to throw your XL on here, and I'm just going to start off at 75 to 90 yards, and oh my God, you guys are off by 6 inches." Well, dial it back. I mean, it's it is what it is. Like, dial it back, and if honestly you're that spot and stock guy or gal that's going to do 80, 90, even 100-yard shot maybe.
Yeah.
Get your setup right. Get everything tuned correctly. And at that distance, I tell everyone, do the 1 inch. Just go with the 1 inch. If you're that good of a shot, I mean, let's be honest. If you're that good of a shot, you can drop an animal at the field point. And you can do it. I mean, it can be done. So the XL, I like it, but at the end of the day, they both have their places. The 1 inch versus the XL.
And I think that's really good point. I didn't even think about that. I was just kind of going off of my experience with them, and I just said, screw it, let's go with the XLs because I'll figure out how to tune it and everything. But I will say I was worried because it was my first experience with a straight up 4-blade. I was a little worried about the penetration, and you kind of already went into it. And after shooting, that blacktail, I think he was like 72 yards. He was angled a little different. I think when I looked down to like dial and everything, he might have like turned a little bit more quartered away. And so I put that arrow right where I thought it should have been, and yet I hit him. Apparently he was quartered to a little harder than I thought. He or did something funky. Long story short, I hit him. I clipped the back hip, and it came out like in the liver area, and went through the guts, obviously. And even though I clipped that pretty thick bone back there, I still got a full pass through at 72. And I'm not a huge guy. I'm shooting a 457 grain arrow at 280 with that setup, and might not even have been 280 back then. But I was really shocked. I got a full pass through. And, didn't really notice that much of a decrease in penetration. Have you actually done some testing on what the differences would be? And I know you touched on it a little bit already, but I'd be curious to see what kind of testing you've done versus, let's say, it wouldn't be fair to do it versus a single bevel or a regular with no bleeders or anything, but versus a 3-blade.
Yeah, no, that would definitely not be apples to apples.
No.
Basically, what we're trying to do is basically get a pass through, but barely. That, if your arrow blows through an animal and goes 20 yards, you didn't expel all that kinetic energy you had built up within the animal. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to get a pass through, but not a ton of pass through.
Makes sense.
If that makes, you know what I mean? Because you want to expel all the kinetic energy that's built up in that arrow within the body of the animal.
Makes sense.
So we did a lot of testing, and you do lose some speed by having 25% more cut. It would be basically shooting a 1-inch 4-blade would basically be the same as shooting, depending on the length of ferrule, so depending how long the blades are, roughly an 1 3/8 3-blade.
Okay.
So it'd be roughly the same amount of cut. But we found by shortening the ferrule, there's less planing, you get better flight out of it. So we're basically, with the 1-inch, comparing ourselves to an 1 3/8 3-blade, with the similar, cut force. I guess you could say cut force for that size.
I really like that comparison.
That's why we went to that.
Yeah, I really like the comparison using like a 3-blade inch. You said 3/8.
The ferrule length, yes.
Okay.
Yep. There's a couple that are out there that are a little bit longer ferrule length that we compare to. Obviously, you get a little more, for the technical guys out there and gals out there, you get a little more decrease. Your kinetic energy is dispersed a little quicker, just given the steepness of the blades and that kind of stuff too. But generally speaking, we're very similar to an 1 3/8 versus our 1-inch.
So your guys' angle is, I'm not gonna say it's very steep at all. Is it a 3-to-1 ratio?
It's just a hair over, yes.
Okay, because a lot of guys are saying that the 3-to-1, and this kind of goes back to the old, traditional style thinking. 3-to-1's, one of the best ratios you can get out there for penetration wise.
Yep, it's just a hair over, but very, very close. And that was kind of one of our starting points.
Okay, that's really cool. And so for guys that maybe haven't seen your head, the best way I can describe it is it's a cut on contact. And the thing that I really like is that I've shot cinder blocks with these things up close. I don't know if you saw the destruction video that I did with the Bro guys. I'm not sure if it made the video or not, but I shot your broadhead right into basically a cement brick or a cinder block, and it bounced right back and was like, "What do you got?" Like that front end of the arrow is really beefy, and it's like almost like a beefed up trocar front, because all the blades come together, but then the ferrule is also really bulky right there as well. Was that a certain part of your guys' design, or is that just the way that it all came together? Because I'd be really curious to see what the front end of that broadhead, what the thinking was on that.
Yeah, so I guess if you want to get a little technical, I could dive into a little more of the technical specs and kind of how we got to where we were on it.
I'd love that.
So let's dive in. So our background, first kind of where we came from, we're a machining shop first and foremost. We've been, like I said, archery industry for almost going on a decade and a half. Mm-hmm. Manufacturing itself, 35 years. Same shop, family owned. It's been, my family, my dad runs it. I'm one of the main managers of it. And then I spun this Tooth Arrow company off a couple years ago, whatever. So we have a lot of experience with different metals and everything else too. And, all that, the engineering background of it. So we basically looked at attributes of other broadheads out there that make a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. So we've taken kind of bits and pieces of what we feel are very good and kind of put into one, and that's where our testing started from. So the tip itself, the whole broadhead is fully machined. So anyone who hasn't really seen our broadhead, think of kind of like a G5, which is one piece. They're metal injected, which is different than ours, and I can get into the differences if you want later on. Metal injected versus machining. And then think of a kind of a 4-blade, like maybe a slick trick or something that's a little bit stubbier design, and kind of mesh those into one. And that's basically what ours is. Different blade thicknesses, different blade angles, but kind of generally speaking, that's kind of what it looks like. So we ended up on a metal or a steel. It's 11L41 is the technical term for it, the exact steel itself.
Okay.
The 41 is the carbon. The 41 is the carbon content. The 11L is the series of steel that it is.
Okay.
Basically, all it is, it's a leaded steel, which lets us machine it better, less burrs, stuff like that in the machining process. And then also, with the carbon content, allows us to heat treat it. So the heat treating process basically hardens the steel. So you have some, ferrules that are aluminum that if they say they're hardened, that's only a case hardened, meaning they put a hardening around the outside, but the center itself is still soft.
Okay.
Heat treating, you can actually through treat it. So you actually rearrange the carbon molecules within the steel. It's basically like curing a knife. So when you're forging a blade, you heat it up and then you throw it in water to cure it. So you heat it and then you draw it back, it's called, to realign the molecules within the blade itself. And there's a bunch of different levels of heat treat, from soft to hard. It's a whole thing called a Rockwell scale, that you can basically determine how hard something is. We picked a 40 to 45. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was, you're beating me to the punch there. I was wondering, cause it seems like most of the broadheads I like are around like a 145 to 150 and maybe a little bit more than that. And I'm not a metal expert, but it just seems, from shooting all these things and then hearing guys talk about what their Rockwell hardness is, it seems like the 150-ish range, give or take from there, seems to be pretty money. Does that depend on the type of steel, or does that depend on, what factors go into that? Yeah.
So basically the average is somewhere between 40 and 60. You can get like what's called tool steel and other stuff that's different, but a lot of things are in that 40 to 60. Okay. And the general rule of thumb, the lower the number, the softer it is.
Right.
And if it's softer, that means there's more bend. It'll bend more before it breaks, but it will bend easier. The bigger the number, the harder it is, and the less likely it is to bend or anything else, but the more brittle it is, so the easier it'll break. So you're always trying to find this happy medium between being hard but not brittle. And the reason we're a 40 to 45 hardness. And the reason we went a hair on the softer side is because our blades are 40 thou thick. So our blades are a little bit thicker than a lot of broadheads that have a 32 to 35 thou thick blade. Mm-hmm. So we could go a little bit softer and not bend as easily because there's more mass there.
That makes sense. Because for example, I've shot kudus all year last year, and I've said, probably the most debated broadhead I've ever shot. Either love them or you hate them. Yeah. A lot of guys, it's either love or hate relationship with most guys that use them. For me, I'm actually kind of in the middle of the road. They're a softer steel. And I think the benefits to a softer steel would be it's easier to sharpen.
Correct. Yep.
But at the same time, you're getting guys that are getting the J's out of I think the 125s or the 150s. They're starting to get those little bent kind of shapes to them and stuff like that, and they nick easier. It's just a softer steel.
Yep.
But you got the ones like maybe and I don't know what the Rockwell is on the Nap Hellraisers, but man, those are such a pain in the ass to sharpen that they deter me from pretty much buying them. My buddy still uses them because he has a bunch of them, but you'll spend forever sharpening those things because they are so freaking hard. And so yours is on the softer end, but you're saying because of the blade thickness, it allows you to use that softer end of the Rockwell hardness.
Correct. Yeah. Well, it's totally different too, because I mean, a lot of blades, you know, you got the German Lutz steel, you know, those are a totally different process, and you got replaceable blades, which are totally different. And so a lot of different components go into what a lot of people call fixed broadheads, even though they're assembled or there's replaceable blades.
Right.
And so, and the different, a lot of differences too, going to more technical side, a lot of 3 blades, their physical blade angle, not the pitch off of the ferrule, but the actual blade angle is a 60-degree sharpness, which is a steeper pitch, which can actually allow the blade angle to roll over a little more.
Mm-hmm.
So it could dull quicker. We went actually with a pretty steeper angle. We have a 45-degree angle. So it's actually sharpened on both sides. So it holds its blade longer, but at the same token, you got to do passes to sharpen on both sides. You can't just kind of roll it back to sharpen it up. So there's pluses and minuses to everything. And honestly, on a side note, I'm probably one of the worst salesmen for my company, even though I own it, because if people go, you know, I love my broadhead, you know, I shoot XYZ. Why should I switch to yours? And I tell them, don't switch. If you're happy and love the product you're using, don't switch. You know, that's the silliest thing you could do. If you're so comfortable with your current setup, why try something new?
Broadheads,
I mean, there's enough going on.
Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say there's enough going on when you're in the field that why be thinking about a new product when what you have right now works?
That's a good point. Well,
I don't know.
Broadheads are one of those industries, especially with guys like me out there. It's like, okay, what's next? Okay, now what can I shoot?
Yeah.
You know, and it's almost a catch-22 because eventually you're going to find one of these shitty broadheads, and it's going to cost me an animal one of these days. But you know, that's what I'm out there doing is testing stuff, so guys don't have to, you know, figure it out on their own. They can. I'll find an animal that, you know, like I found a few duds. You know, I didn't even use one for hunting.
Oh yeah.
As soon as I took it out of the package, and they used to manufacture their products, I believe, a lot better. But Dirt Nap, I took one out of the package, or 3 out of the package, and it was nicked. It was like it had been shot for like a week, and you know, it was like, what the heck is going on here? And then it was this flimsy plastic ferrule, like felt like a plastic ferrule. I'm not sure if it was or not. I didn't even bother. Yeah. They weren't worth my time testing. It was like, what in the hell is going on here? And so it's just, I think broadheads are one of those products, man, that guys are always searching for the latest and greatest and the newest. And it's just really, really unique because you don't get that with bows. You don't get that with probably binoculars or really anything else that I know. But broadheads are kind of a, you know, and even more so than arrows. It's really weird. And it's funny because it's probably one of the most important parts of the equation when you're going out there and bow hunting. It's the point of impact between you and the animal, you know?
Oh, yeah. And I would totally agree with that. And I guess I could probably tell you at least my opinion why that's the case. From a business standpoint, broadheads have the smallest barrier to entry to get into the marketplace.
Really?
You know, if you want to manufacture a bow, you have a ton of components, a ton of tooling, and everything else to get up and running. If you want to manufacture an arrow, you're going to have to go overseas because there's not really anyone that does carbon here in the U.S. And you have to have huge runs. So there's a lot of upfront costs. Basically every different carbon weave patent is more or less taken care of already. So you're either going to be paying royalties or licensing from someone else. And so again, there's pretty big barriers to entry there. A broadhead, there's not a ton. I mean, yes, there's upfront costs, obviously, but comparatively, there's a lot less upfront cost to get started. So a lot more individuals who have ideas for broadheads can actually bring them to market versus someone who has an idea for a new bow or an idea for a new arrow or an idea for, something else. So that's why the broadhead market seems very saturated, just because it's much easier to get into, relatively speaking, financially, than a lot of other products.
That's really interesting. I've never thought about that before.
New broadheads coming up. Yep. And so that's why there's a lot of new broadheads coming to market every year. I mean, you go to the ATA show, and every year in the new product area, there's always 5 to 7 new broadheads every year. It's just because it's one of the easiest product categories to get into in hunting or in archery in general. Versus camo, for example. Okay, you develop a pattern. Well, now you need to have 15 different sizes, 10 different base layer, everything else too, and then you're going to go overseas to manufacture it. Which again, there's a lot of things that come up with doing that. So yeah, broadheads are quite easy in general to get into, which is why they're always changing, which is why there are always new ones coming to market. So that's on the business side of it, kind of why everyone's always testing broadheads, because everyone claims to be the new latest and greatest, because there's a ton of new ones coming to market all the time.
For sure. I mean, I fell prey to just trying to keep up with it, and it's pretty much impossible. You'd have to be a millionaire to keep up with buying and testing broadheads. And some things that really stood out to me, and the main reason when I bought your guys' broadheads for the first time, and the only reason I haven't used them since is because I'm constantly testing shit, is because like he put it on the counter and he spun it, and I'm just like, it was one of the best spinning broadheads I had seen at the time. And granted, he probably squared the arrow and everything before he spun it, and basically was doing a good job of selling the product, but it just seemed like the shorter design and the overall design length of the broadhead would be much more capable to keep the straightness than, say, something as long as like a cutthroat or something like that. Not to say cutthroats aren't straight as hell, but it would just be easier to keep those tolerances. And then I love the cut-on contact design. I'm a big fan of cut-on contact heads. I don't know if you can beat them, honestly. I mean, it would be really hard to beat a cut-on contact, especially for penetration. And it just was made, I think it was completely made in America. You guys are from like Michigan or something, aren't you?
Minnesota, yeah. Minnesota. So we're actually really proud of that. Yeah, we're really proud of that. We, not only is our product made in Minnesota, everything we get, from our tooling to our steel to everything, is U.S. So, I mean, we keep everything U.S. made. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I think we can, produce the product we do, is our lead engineer has been with us for 32 years.
Oh, wow.
He's been working on the same machines for 32 years, and he heads up all of our, so I guess going back, I'm sure some of the people listening here are in manufacturing. We do everything on CNC machines, 12 axes CNC machines. So basically they're computer controlled. You write a program, they spit that program out and run it, simplified. And it took us actually, after we developed our design, it took us 2 more years before we actually came to market, because we had to get efficient enough to make it where the price point made sense to buy it. We had, 6 months into developing it, we found we had a great product that we felt was a place in the marketplace for it. We could either go overseas to reduce our labor costs and everything else and get to the price where we need to be, or figure out a way internally to make it where it made sense. And we spent another 1.5 years to make sure we kept everything in the U.S. before we brought it to market, to get our pricing down where it needed to be. We actually developed a new manufacturing technique that we actually hold patents for this manufacturing technique, to improve our efficiencies, to get it where we could keep everything 100% US. And that was really important to us. So yeah, we ended up cranking out that way, and we're very happy we did it. Everything's in house now. Well, I take that back. We've outsourced our shipping, but the whole manufacturing, everything else is in house, and the shipping's still within the U.S. But everything else is in house. Yeah, everything's in house.
Yeah, man. When I first bought your head, the local rep was telling me, or the local guy at the counter was telling me, it was a small startup company, and they're just getting off the ground, and kind of just grassroots sold me. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
then,
no, I mean, that's 100% true. Can I ask, where did you buy from originally?
Waldron's Outdoor Sports. It's just literally 2 minutes walk time.
Yeah, Oregon, right?
Yep. Yeah. John is the one that was telling me about him because he knew I was a gear guy. He's like, check these out. So
yeah, we're actually, because did you guys? I might be totally off here. Are you guys still a fixed only, or did you guys open up to expandables?
We just this year is the first year you can use expandables.
That's what I thought. I thought something was passing shortly, so it just passed. Okay.
Yeah, literally this year. I was thinking about using one for turkeys, but I don't know. I mean, I'm doing this budget bow thing, and I don't think I can make fixed blades fit in the budget. But at some point, I'm going to have to deviate from the budget because I'm going to shoot too much stuff and eventually have to buy more gear. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've actually, Oregon, we did really well. Our first year we did really well with dealers up, obviously, in the fixed states. There's a couple of them still. We did really well there, and then just because of the durability, we did great in hog country. Go down to Texas and Oklahoma and those areas. We did really well there too. Yeah, it's slowly catching on. And going back to the spinning, when you first saw it at Waldron's, obviously I'm sure the Arrow was fantastic. The insert was perfect and everything else too. But the reason, that's why we machined it. So there's some popular brands out there right now that are metal injected. A little the technical side, when you metal inject, you're actually changing the metal to almost a liquid form, putting it in a mold, and then rehardening it. When you change states or properties, you're introducing oxygen. And so metal injecting has somewhere between 6 and 8% oxygen actually within the metal once it hardens. And that's why the whole spin testing came about, because oxygen is a lot lighter than metal. And so if you have oxygen outside of the diameter, you're going to have variables in weight outside of it. So if you spin test it, that will show you if you have oxygen outside of the diameter shaft, outside an external weight.
That's
to
interesting.
Spin it. Yeah. So if you spin testing will show that blades are balanced, aka there's no oxygen in the blade. So that's where the whole spin testing originally came from. But anyways, that's just a little background.
No, I love that. I love hearing that kind of stuff, man. And I, from a guy that's not, I don't even know what the proper word is for it, but a metal, connoisseur or a metal expert, I like hearing it from guys that are experts in metal and materials and figuring out why is this material better than this material, what are, the other materials out there. And so I really appreciate that, because it seems like everybody's claiming they're using the newest, latest, and greatest technology in steel, or they're I don't know how to even describe it, but they're just trying to sell probably a rehashed material or something that's already been used somewhere else.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I never name names. I never bash other brands, because honestly, there's a lot of great broadheads out there. There's a lot of things that work very, very well, and there's a lot of things that people have used for a long time and have had a lot of success with. And the last thing I want to do is tell them that their broadhead's not right, it's not good for them, they need to change when they've had success with it. That's not what I'm there to do.
Right.
But I want to educate people and say that, well, the reason you spin test is because when you metal inject, you introduce oxygen, which creates air bubbles, which can decrease hardness or durability and also offset weights on different blades. And that's why you spin test to make sure there's no oxygen in the blades and it's balanced. Or when someone says it's surgical steel, that's the exact same as it's stainless steel, just a slightly different grade of stainless steel. Hardness is the exact same. There's no difference in hardness. It's the exact same, you know. And so like, there's a lot of catchphrases that are used out there that it's steel. You know, it's the same thing. So,
have you heard of the Montec CSs, the carbon steels?
Yeah.
You know, one of their things I believe is that you can get them sharper or something like that with the carbon introduced in there. Is that, you know, at least I've heard that. Is that something that you would say would be a benefit of adding to the metal, that carbon footprint or whatever, that little bit of carbon introducing that? Would that be a benefit, being able to get it sharper?
That has nothing to do with sharpness. It allows you to heat treat it. The carbon molecules will realign with heat treating.
Okay.
So carbon in the steel itself does nothing for sharpness. Sharpness comes down to the angle of the blade and how fine your sharpening is.
Perfect.
I mean, that's
perfect, because I've always heard that
blade,
some guys are claiming that, and it's like, man, I mean, you know, like, prove to me you're not a criminal. I can't prove to you, you know, it's like trying to prove wrong a negative. Yeah. You can't. I mean, you'd have to talk to the source on that one. So when I get somebody like you, it's nice to ask those kind of questions.
Yeah, and it's the same thing too. I mean, it's, you know, what penetrates better or what causes, you know, the most hemorrhaging, you know, inside. It's very subjective. It basically comes down to kinetic energy and total cutting surface.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's you know, 2-blade, single bevel, 3-blade, longer ferrule, 4-blade. There's a lot of good broadheads out there, and we're in a unique position because our manufacturing side is kind of our bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not trying to be the end-all, be-all for everyone. We're not going to come out with an expandable. We're not going to come out with a 3-blade. We're very happy with where we are in the marketplace. You know, we know our identity. Our identity is a fully machined, American-made 4-blade.
Mm-hmm.
And with the size we're trying to be, and we're very fortunate that we have, you know, probably I don't know with the dealers, I know 95% of the dealers that buy from us reorder, and our online sales, our customer base is probably 90 to 93% reorder. So we're very fortunate that once people try us, they tend to like it.
That's pretty good, man. I mean, that sounds impressive to me. I don't own my own broadhead company, but if I had 90, you know, something percent success for having people come back and listen to the podcast, which I don't know what it is, I'd be happy with that.
Well, you should try some metrics out. You know, get some email subscriber list and see kind of what the unsubscribe rate is versus the, you know, share with a friend, and, you know, get some metrics and kind of see what people like.
I should, man. I do all that with my YouTube channel, but with the analytics that I have available for the podcast, it's not near as good. YouTube's really on top of their game to be able to analyze the data and stuff. I could tell you, you know, what average age, what average people listen to the videos.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's crazy. YouTube's out. Do you guys have a YouTube channel?
I mean, we technically own a channel, but there's nothing up there. Here's the hard thing too. We're a small enough company where I'm kind of the jack of all trades. You know, we outsource some stuff and whatever, but it's just hard to stay on top of everything. It's what's the best venue? Is it YouTube? Is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? Is it, you know, it's kind of the live and learn. I don't know. How old are you?
29.
Okay. Yeah. So we're basically the same age. I'm 30. I'm 33. Okay. And it's kind of the thing where I didn't get Facebook till my sophomore year in college, junior year in college. And it's kind of, I'm learning as I go, put it that way. I don't have, I mean, I've talked to so many people about, Google Analytics, and you got to do this and this and SEO stuff or whatever it's called, all that. And I get it, but we sent a massive customer survey out last year,
Mm-hmm.
and basically saying, how'd you hear about us? Pro shop, social media, be specific, all this stuff. And the vast majority was from a friend.
Yep, I was gonna say word of mouth is the best form of marketing,
yep.
and probably the cheapest.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely is. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of, we're just kind of sticking with the grassroots and word of mouth. Hopefully people like it, or enough people like it that they tell a buddy or two, and they give us a try.
Well, I know my hunting partner Anthony. I don't know if you've listened to the podcast enough to hear him on the podcast, but Team Dirty Trad is his Instagram name, and
yep.
he was actually kicking around the idea of using your guys' arrows or your guys' broadheads this year, and I'm like, well, I'm actually having the owner on Monday, and he's like, no shit. It's like, yeah, but he's in Salem. I was going to try and get him on here to just figure out if it was a broadhead he'd want to use and everything. And I did a review on YouTube a couple years ago, and it didn't get a lot of views. I'd say less than probably 3,000, for sure less than 3,000, I think. And there was guys that were searching for Tooth of the Arrow on YouTube and really appreciated the feedback and stuff. And I imagine that's the kind of thing that a newer company would need, is that kind of exposure, and actually guys killing stuff with it and saying, here's how it went, here's the blood trail and stuff like that. And where I'm leading into that with blood trails is, I personally believe that you can't really predict a blood trail, but I believe that you can increase. If you look at blood trails, the way that and correct me if you disagree with this, I'm not dying on any mountains here, but when I review a broadhead now, I kind of just don't say pass or fail. It's more of like on a spectrum. And so for like all year last year, like I said, I used the Kudus, and people are like, well, how are the blood trails? I'm like, well, if you go on a spectrum, I believe it's probably around a 7, a 6.5 to a 7 of producing blood trails, meaning sometimes you're going to get one, sometimes you aren't. I believe it's not going to be the best broadhead for blood trails. You're decreasing the likability of a blood trail just by the way it's designed with the exit and the entry wounds. I believe having more of a hole rather than a slice will produce a better exit for the blood to escape. And I believe that your broadhead produces more consistently a better blood trail than, say, a single bevel would, or something on the lines of that. Is that, from your experience in testing, is that semi-accurate, or does that ring true at all?
Yeah. So actually, going back to your co-host wanted to try us out, have him send me a DM. I'll give him a pack or two, just play around with it. That will make his decision easy.
Yeah.
And then going back to the blood trails. So I actually really like the fact that you said the spectrum, because that's totally true. And everything's different. It depends on shot placement too. I mean, you can't just say, hit an animal, there's the blood trail.
Right.
It's depending on what you hit, it's going to be totally different every time. With that said, blood trail is not everything with dropping an animal. You want the most internal damage possible, or most, energy displaced within the cavity of the animal to drop it. And yes, blood trail is a byproduct of everything being displaced inside of it. Mm-hmm. 4-blade will, again, giving you more cut than, say, a 3-blade. It's going to core it more and open up more of a channel for blood. So apples to apples, yes, you'll get some more blood out of it, but I hate when people say, well, I base my opinion on blood trail, because that's only part of the equation when it comes to putting an animal down quickly and everything else too. So it's part of the equation. yes, we do produce more blood, in my opinion, than a typical 3-blade, but that's only a little portion of everything that should be factored into what you're using.
Right, and there's so many factors that go into that. Like I hear, this broadhead produces the biggest badass ass, blood trails on the market, and it's like, man,
oh yeah,
if you shoot an animal in the femoral artery, any broadhead, is going to look like it's devastating. I mean, if you shoot one in the knee, you're going to get immediate blood. Does that make that one better than?
Yeah,
it's just so. There's no, I don't believe there's a perfect test for testing broadheads out there, and I'm constantly, looking at old tests I've done, thinking, you idiot, like that's not going to work, and it's out there for people to see, but for example, I go off of blood trail probably consistency. How consistently are you going to get a better blood trail? It's not, did you shoot this animal? Did you get a blood trail? It's not that black and white, and for
correct,
I would personally like to see, my probably my favorite design would be like a traditional style with bleeders. Would probably be my favorite style. However, I haven't found one that I'm absolutely in love with. But design-wise, that gets me pretty much everything that I want, and it's basically just a tooth of the arrow with shorter, 2 blades being shorter that are perpendicular or that are in line with each other. And that's really the only difference. I mean, if you guys shortened I'm not saying you need to do this, but your design is so close to what I would shoot. It's just 4 full-size blades versus having 2 mini blades,
We've actually designed that to the T what you're describing. We've designed it. I have offline. I can send you a picture of what it looks like, and you'll laugh because it's what it's sitting on my desk right now, actually. But the reason we didn't bring that to market is testing. We found 0 flight difference. We found 0 durability difference. And by cutting 2 of the blades down to bleeders, now we're actually about 10% less cut surface than a 3-blade.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only reason we didn't bring it to market, because if someone asked us the question, why 2 blades with bleeders over a 3-blade, we had no answer for it.
Right.
With a 4-blade, we actually have an answer why. The bigger cutting surface, so the more cutting surface. I'll send you. I work from home and I go in the office 3 days a week.
Cool.
So on Wednesday, well, the office is a manufacturing shop, and honestly, I like working from home quite a bit. I got a nice little home office set up. I'll send you a picture on Wednesday, and you're gonna laugh so hard. You're gonna look at it and go, "Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about." Because it's been, we've made it. It's sitting right on my desk. I've tested it a ton. Yeah, you'll chuckle.
That's funny. Yeah, because I've talked to a few guys about kind of like the conversation. You know what I'd like to have in a broadhead, or if I designed a broadhead conversation, and it's always funny because guys are like, I've got something pretty darn similar, or they've thought about it themselves, and it just,
oh yeah,
I just for whatever reason, through using all the broadheads, that just seems to be my favorite design so far. But another thing that I'd like to ask is, have you guys thought about going non-vented at all? And what is the reason for going vented over non-vented?
Yep. So we actually have a non-vented in our 1 3/16. It's a 175 grain.
Okay.
The reason we went vented is because it allows us. So because our blades are 40 thou thick, they're pretty durable with the heat treat and everything else too. And going vented, we found there was no whistle. So there's no noise difference between a vented or non-vented. But by putting more of the weight within the diameter of the shaft, it allowed us to get better flight, less variables, less wiggle outside of the shaft. So it's more, more field tip like, I guess you could say. And that's why we ended up going with the vents in it.
That's interesting. So you guys actually tested the vented versus the non-vented, and you didn't see any difference in the sound?
No, minimal. I mean, obviously, there's if you take a decibel reading, there's a hair difference. but nothing compared. When we compared it to other 4-blade broadheads that had replaceable blades, the noise difference was substantial. It was substantially less what we had because when you have to fit blades into a ferrule, to fit them in, you have to have clearance, and clearance means gaps. So there's room to fit stuff in. When you machine something out of one solid piece, you eliminate those gaps, and so you eliminate any extra space for air to flow into and whistle out of.
That makes sense.
So we, yes, I mean, vented versus non-vented, there's a hair of a difference, but comparatively to replaceable blade head, it was much, much less. And so that's why we decided, we felt it was more of a benefit to have a much better flight than just a hair quieter.
Interesting.
So yeah, we did look at both.
Well, I know when I've shot it up against, and we'll have somebody standing off to the side safely, and we're shooting, broadheads past them safely, because it sounds sketchy. That there is an obvious difference between designs and broadheads, and for example, we'll compare apples and oranges just because it's blatantly obvious that, say, something like a kudu broadhead or a helix or something like that is a single bevel non-vented, or a bone broadhead, is obviously going to be quieter than a whistler like a dirt nap or a Montec. And there's stark differences. And so with yours, I noticed that it was quieter than most of the other broadheads that were apples to apples, if not all of them. It was on par. But I will say with those more surface area cutting or those larger blades, and granted I was shooting the XLs, you're going to hear them push that wind more. There's no whistle, but you can definitely hear that pushing the wind more kind of sound, that shh kind of sound.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean it's just a territory that comes with using a 4-blade XL, or really probably any 4-blade that's out there that has decent blade sizes. What would be, I guess where I'm leading with that is what would be, in your opinion, in the fairness of transparency, what would be some drawbacks to maybe your guys' design over, say, maybe like a slick trick or a traditional 3-blade?
Sure. Yeah. So back to what you said about the wind. You tried the XL. Again, that's pushing 35 or 33% more air.
Right.
So drop that sound back about 33%, and that's our 1-inch. Because it's just pushing much more air.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does make that pushing sound. Again, it comes with the territory of being a fixed blade.
Right. It's a big head. I mean, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, exactly. You get to the 1 3/16, and now you have, you're over 3 inches of cutting surface.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting out there. Biggest drawbacks, you can't replace the blades. People are saying, it's funny. So when we first started selling this, I would tell everyone, it's fully machined from one solid piece. They look at it and they go, how do you replace the blades? You don't. That's the biggest drawback. If you're looking for a broadhead that, you can scuff a blade up and then replace the blade, we're not your broadhead. Yes, you can resharpen it. Yes, you can touch it up. But if you, bend the blade too far or damage the tip of the ferrule, whatever,
yeah,
you got to replace the broadhead. Our price point is decent. We're $40, for a 3-pack for the 1-inch, and we're, $45 for a 3-pack of the 1 3/16. So we're right in the middle of the road for price point. But I would say that's the biggest drawback of our design. You just can't replace the blades. So if it does get damaged, you're throwing the whole thing out. You're not replacing the blade.
One thing I would add is I did buy the sharpener that you guys made, and if I was going to suggest somebody buy your heads, I would also buy the sharpener. just because the sharpener
Yes.
made it so much more faster and easier, and it was a pain in the ass without the sharpener for me. I'm not a sharpening guru, but
yeah, no, it is a total pain in the ass too, because our blades are at 45 degrees. It doesn't work on a stone. You can't use a flat stone to sharpen it up, because those flat stones are made for 60 degree, and on 45 degree, it's not going to work.
Right.
So our sharpener, for people who haven't seen it, it's just a traditional V sharpener. It's about 6 inches long, and there's 2 stones offset at basically it's 22.5 degrees total for a 45 degree inclusive angle. So basically one blade sits between the 2 stones. You pass it along, you hit 2 sides or 2 blades, one side of each, and then you rotate it and you hit all 8 sides of, so 4 blades, 2 sides each, hit all 8 sides.
That makes sense. And I guess another question is, you guys use you said the L41, or what steel were you guys using?
We use a medium grit. What's the actual grit of it? Off the top of my head, honestly, I'm blanking out on the grit of it. It's a medium grit.
No worries. I was just curious if there was, there's probably obviously better steels than that, but in order to get it down to the price point, you guys went with the steel that you did.
We did. It's a middle of the road. So our price point on our sharpener is $30.
Okay.
If we looked at doing, a pack of different grits, replaceable stones, all that, all of a sudden we're in the $50 to $60 range,
mm-hmm.
and it removes a lot of people from that price point. That's the hardest thing, I guess. Going back to the business side of stuff, the hardest thing is trying to find a happy balance. What'll make the most people happy and be the most kind of economical sense? Because we could have come out with a broadhead, we could change the hardness, we could change it to a total stainless steel, we can do a bunch of other stuff. Well, then all of a sudden it's $150 for a 3-pack. But we wanted to have broadheads that were more accessible to the average person. I don't want to call them the weekend warrior, but it's someone who isn't going to be concerned if they lose a broadhead. Could we make a sharpener that could be, interchangeable with different stones and hone it better and all that? We could, but then it'd be a $75, to $100 sharpener. And we want to provide the absolute best product we can for the average person to have the best hunting experience that they can. We don't want to feel like you need to go on a $10,000 hunt to use our product.
Right.
If that makes sense, I guess.
Well, no, it does.
We're trying to be for everyone.
It's, I've been in line with that thinking all year with the budget bow challenge, and just saying, shit's kind of getting ridiculous. There's guys that are doing great with $130 a pack broadheads, and I believe that the quality's there and everything, and it's justified. However, does that make the guy that goes out there with a pack of muzzies feel inferior, or feel that his broadhead maybe can't get the job done? And the answer is no. They can both get the job done.
Exactly.
But my thing would be, kind of like relating it to, I guess, rifle hunting is if I had to go to the store, and this doesn't apply to me, but I think for maybe guys that hunt, maybe more eastern kind of guys, maybe guys around Minnesota, is if I'm on a hunt and say I, maybe ruined a few broadheads before I went out, and, maybe I hit them together and I shouldn't have been shooting groups. Is the broadhead available enough for guys to go to just most broadhead store or most archery stores and pick up another pack of replacement broadheads? Because I know if I'm shooting, let's just say if I'm shooting an iron will, those aren't really in very many stores. I don't know of very many guys that even carry those. So if you run out of those, you're kind of screwed if you're wanting to shoot those broadheads. Are you guys in enough stores right now to where a guy would have a pretty good, decent chance if he does have to go out and buy more right off the bat that he could find them?
You look at the most recent membership of ATA, there's something like, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,100 registered archery stores in ATA. For those who don't know, that's the Archery Trade Association. It's kind of the business trade show, of archery. we're in. I have to look at my numbers, but right now, I believe we're 200. Yes and no. If you're hunting out west of the Mississippi, there's a good chance we're in any store you go to. Besides any of the majors, we're not in Bass, Cabela's, any of the big boys. But pro shop, out of those 200 stores, I would say 160 of them or 150 of them are west of the Mississippi.
That seems pretty. That seems pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good market penetration.
It is, considering 2/3 of all the stores are east of the Mississippi. So we're, west of the Mississippi is a third the size of east of the Mississippi, and that's where 3/4 of our dealers are. So we've had a much better success rate out west.
Makes sense, and that's because you're getting the fixed blade states out west.
We're getting the fixed blade states. There's a lot more spot and stock, which leads to longer shots, which ours fly great at distance, especially our 1-inch. And it's a quicker business cycle, because a lot of, especially when you get southern, there's a more or less year-round hunting, depending what season it is. So people are quicker to try new stuff. Where, for example, you go to, Michigan or whatever, and it's the vast majority is deer season, and that's once a year. So if you introduce someone a product in 2017, let's say, they think about it in 2017, they use their old broadhead in 2017. 2018, they play around with yours, they think about using it, their buddy said cool, and then they try you in 2019. Well, that's a 24-month business cycle just to get one new customer.
Yeah.
When out west, someone might try something in the fall, and by spring or early summer, 2 seasons later, depending where they are, they might be onto you. So it's a quicker business cycle out west, and which leads itself better to younger companies having a better success rate.
That makes a lot of sense. I never even thought about it like that. I figured I take Pennsylvania for granted. I'm like, man, if you can make it in Pennsylvania, that's like the bow hunter mecca, I hear. It just seems like most of the bows are designed around Pennsylvania, tree stand hunters and stuff like that.
Oh, it definitely is, because that's by far the biggest marketplace. I mean, in Michigan alone, in Wisconsin, which is I think the 3rd largest state, you have something like 300,000 registered hunters. Pennsylvania is something like 500,000 or 600,000. I mean, there's a ton of people that bow hunt, but it's once a year. So it's a very, very slow business cycle from the business side of it. And that's why the East Coast is always kind of lagging, depending on the product, 2 to 4 years behind the West Coast, only because of the business cycle, of how long it takes things to enter that new product market, just because it's a much shorter time that they can use products. So if you're looking for the new hot product, look west. That's absolutely no knock on people out east. I think they're just as up to date, just as informed as everyone else. Just there's snow on the ground for 7 months of the year, 6 months of the year. They're not outside playing around with stuff. They're just they're not playing around with stuff. So it takes that much longer for a new product to work its way east. So if something's catching on out west, give it time, give it 2 to 4 years, and it'll be catching on out east.
That really makes sense. And from a business perspective, from a guy like me that doesn't have that perspective, it's fine. It's good to hear stuff like that, because it helps me understand the market better and why things are the way they are. I guess I've got one more question here for you, and it's kind of an oddball question. There's one broadhead I've seen that's 3-blade single bevel. Did you guys ever play or test a 4-blade single bevel?
We've got that question a decent amount, and twofold. from the manufacturing side,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little harder for us to do.
Really?
Not a lot harder, a little harder. A three blade single bevel is actually harder for us. Just for machining out a solid, we're taking a lot more of the body away, so a lot more scrap, which decreases cycle time, increases cost because we're producing less per hour. But the way we're set up for the sharpening, going to a single bevel, we couldn't take as much. We couldn't do it as efficiently as we could with doing a 45 degree, two-side sharpening. It'd be harder to get the sharpness we felt acceptable.
Makes sense.
And yes, we actually did. We didn't do a 4-blade single. We did a 3-blade single.
Mm-hmm.
And just our penetration test, everything else too, we found no difference. So
interesting.
With how we were set up, we went with the 45 degree, both sides. We didn't find much of a difference.
I've always wondered, because I've seen one broadhead single bevel 3-blade, because I'm like, I wonder why we don't see these, and I'm always, interested in thinking outside the box and if it would work, but it didn't really see any benefit over penetration wise or wound channel wise over your guys' blade design.
No, I didn't. I think when you get to that level of detail, there'll be a few people that tell a difference, but it's, I liken it to someone going out and hitting a golf ball, or, let's hitting 2 golf balls side to side,
mm-hmm.
and then asking which one has a harder core or a softer core. The average golfer has no idea.
Yeah.
If you're a touring professional on the PGA, you'll be like, oh my gosh, ball A, that was definitely better, whatever. So some people will tell difference, but the absolute, 98% of people won't notice any difference. And if we can save 15% our cost, 20% our cost, and keep a broadhead that's affordable to the majority,
mm-hmm.
that's what we want to do. So that's why we did play around with it on the 3-blade, but that's why we, ultimately ended up with the design we have.
Sweet. Well, I'm happy with the conversation we had, man. I mean, it was a really transparent, conversation. You answered some, I would think, tougher questions and stuff like that. And I'm always kind of nervous having somebody on that has a product, because I don't want it to turn into like an hour-long ad, of why you should buy this or why you should buy that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I really appreciate the transparency and the fairness and how you talked about your product and stuff like that. And it really made sense on how you guys came to your to your 4-blade design that you have. I mean, it answered a lot of questions that I had personally. My main thing was penetration and stuff like that, and you answered it, in great detail. So I appreciate your time, Luke, and it sounds like you're on a good thing, and you guys are growing and everything. So it's great to see an American-made company starting to do good, kind of even with the grassroots effort.
Yeah, thanks. And how about I'll do a reverse. I'll do an anti-plug. If you're listening to this and are totally happy with your setup and your broadhead, you don't need to try us, because you're happy and your setup works, so you're good.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, if you are looking for a new broadhead, here's my plug. We do offer a single pack, so one broadhead that for anyone who wants to try us for $1.99 on our website. Mm-hmm. So any new customer, try us out on us, $1.99. Yes, I lose a ton of money on that, but most people that try us end up buying it, so I'm happy to give broadheads away. There's my 30-second plug.
There you go. Hey, no, I appreciate it, man. And that $1.99 just probably doesn't even cover the shipping, but I mean, that's pretty cool that you're doing that. And I think it's a great idea for marketing. I mean, you could just rack it up as the cost to attain customers or whatever that term is. But
yeah, yep.
So
I rack it up in the marketing cost. I could take a multiple full-page ads out for X number of dollars, or I could more or less, the $1.99 covers our packaging costs and our physical packaging costs. And I rack it up as just a marketing cost. And we're fortunate enough that we've been doing it now for, about 6 months or so, 7 months. And the people that have tried us and have ended up buying from us off of that, just because we give a discount code, a coupon, for off their first order too, with that sample, just kind of tracking that. Our conversion has been enough where it's actually making a lot of sense. And, money aside, it's just nice to see. It's nice affirmation that once people try it, they genuinely tend to like it. But a lot of people do say, it does fly good. It is sharp, and I do like it. That's just, as a designer, as an owner, it makes you feel good inside.
No, I bet, and be able to create something. I mean, it's just nice having something that you created from scratch, so that was inside of your head, brought into reality, to have it accepted. I mean,
exactly.
That feels it's an amazing feeling. So, congratulations on that, man. I mean, it's pretty cool to see.
Thank you.
But all right, man. Well, why don't you give the people a place to go, like your Instagram and maybe a web page that they can go and check out your product and get a hold of that promo.
Yes, just Tooth of the Arrow Broadheads, plural, so it's an S at the end. So toothofthearrowbroadheads.com. Everything's there. You'll get a little pop-up saying subscribe to our newsletter. I honestly recommend doing that. We don't spam. We send out once, maybe twice a month, and everything that comes out has a discount code on it. So it's literally coupons for free stuff. We don't spam. We don't sell information, nothing like that. I would say our Facebook page, but with how the Facebook, Google, Instagram algorithms are recently with hunting, things are being siphoned pretty much. So a lot of newsfeed stuff, and we can talk more about that offline if you want, but it's been the last couple of years have been a little hassle there. But yeah, our website's the best place to get information on it. Honestly, and if you are in an area, promote your pro shop. We're in a lot of pro shops, and being a small business owner, I want people to support small businesses. So whenever you can, support your pro shop. So if we're in your pro shop, buy it from them. If you're not, buy it through our website.
Awesome. I love hearing that kind of thing. So, all right, Luke, well, I'll let you get going here, man, but I really appreciate your time, and I'll have you just send me those broadheads, and then I'll sell them to Anthony.
Perfect. Yeah. Actually, mark them up. I think they're, 50 a pack, 60 a pack, something like that?
Yeah, I'll tell him I paid
there.
30 or something, and then he can have them for 25.
Perfect. That's what I like.
Yeah, there you go. Hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I appreciate the time tonight.
Hey, no worries, man. And I'll have this up probably literally tonight. It only takes me about 20 minutes from here to now to get it up. So there'll be a little bit of editing with the little pause we had there where I lost connection. So it might be a little while before it's up, but it'll be up tonight, man. So, and I'll tag you on Instagram and everything to see it.
Yeah, and the people looking for it, the one-pack samples on our website too. The promo code you need to enter to get the discount on the one-pack is try us. So TRYUS, all one word at checkout, and that drops the total price down to $1.99.
God,
so that's
cool.
What they need to know to try it out.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I don't think I know anybody else that does that. So, and for guys like me that love to test gear out, that's nice of you, to say the least. So,
saying put your money where your mouth is. So that's what we did.
For sure. Well, all right, man. Well, I really appreciate your time, and we'll talk a little bit offline here in a second. But thanks everybody for listening, and be sure to give Luke a check out on Instagram, and I'll put links to his website and Instagram in the description box below if you're wanting to just get a quick way to check it out. So, all right, guys. We'll see you later. See you, Luke.
Awesome. Thank you. Yep. See ya.
Bye. All right, guys, that's this episode of the podcast. If you want to go check them out, go to Tooth of the Arrow Broadheads, plural, .com, and use that promo code, try us. It's pretty risk-free, man. $2, and you get a a $20 or $10 broadhead or $15 broadhead shipped to your door, that's a pretty good deal. So outside of that, really appreciate everybody for listening to the podcast. And as always, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.